Welcome to the HU Move Makers podcast, where we highlight folks that are blazing the trail and making moves in Howard culture. Welcome to the HU Move Maker podcast, where we highlight folks in Howard culture that are trendsetters and making moves. Today, we got a special guest in the building. We got the head of creative partnerships at Snap. He develops Snap's creator shows and Snap originals. Work with YouTube, some of YouTube's biggest stars, man. In his 8-year tenure at Google, collaborated with Will Smith, Naomi Campbell, Liza Koshy, Aina. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Before that, he was the co-founder of BE LLC, based out in New York. Got a bachelor's degree from Howard University, international business. Focus in Asia Pacific studies. That sounds difficult, bro. That sounds difficult, man. Francis Roberts, welcome to the show, bro.
What's good, man? Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
For sure, man. All the way from LA, man. Got you on the show finally, man. How's quarantine life?
It's been good. It's been crazy. Actually, even this week I was dealing with some like crazy sickness and medical stuff. But it's been a good time to like have some time to yourself and think and like really understand and evaluate, I think. And my motto is I'm trying to prosper in this pandemic. So
man, preach, bro. So you out in LA, man. What's the temperature out there?
It's about 70 today.
Damn. So you got the AC in the window, the fan. Yeah, I'm in Chicago, man. I walk outside, I see my breath, man. It's cold.
If you're gonna be in a pandemic, 70 degrees in December is kind of the way to go.
So, man, you recently got this role, head of creative partnerships over at Snap. Yeah. I think you got it back in May, right?
Yep, started back in May.
Yeah, so you got it back in May. Now here we are in November, man. So tell me about, some of the things you're doing over there, man, and how you got the position.
Yeah, I mean, it's been definitely a whirlwind, a lot going on. I've been so excited about the role, to be honest. And what I'm really doing here is really thinking about how we're going to build out and grow a creator ecosystem where like creative people have the opportunity to come, be creative, get their art off, create shows, create their art and connect with their audience. But also build a business at the end of the day and grow that business in a way that, we're actually rewarding creativity with economics. So it's been an interesting venture to just like splash right into. Like you said, I started in May in the midst of the pandemic. And like really hit the ground running. I've already, I recently like launched the first show I ever developed.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it's a show called Get Real Mikayla. It's actually a CGI influencer.
CGI, what's that?
Yeah, so it's like, a digital influencer, right? So like it's like a robot girl, if you will.
Oh, wow. So not even a person.
Yeah. So like there's like this whole team of people that work behind her and like create her, and we create the story and like stuff like that. But yeah, she's not a real human, but like she's signed to like CGA. She has like a agency deal, actually. So
wow. And you created this. This is something you created.
So I got to like kind of step in and like work, like come in and like we got the show greenlit before I started. But then, when I started, it was like up to me to like develop it and like figure out what is it going to look like? What are we actually going to talk about? What do these look like? What's the format? That type of stuff. So it's been so interesting to just like come in, hit the ground running, being like, and when I think about what Snapchat is really about, it's like always a lot of times been like the innovator in the field, been the one like kind of trailblazing in so many ways. So even doing something like that is like right in the vein of that. So I'm so excited to be like continuing to do stuff like that and like think about like what are the next things that we want to be doing? What's the next innovation that we want to focus on?
Man, so walk me through the process of creating a CGI, because prior to you telling me this, I'm born in 81. So, prior to you mentioning that, I had no idea what that is and even what that entails.
Yeah. So there's this awesome team that's behind, this influencer, Lil Mikayla, that they, she was like formulated, a few years back. And she's really been working to like kind of build up her, audience. She releases music, does things like that. And so over time, she's been like kind of like becoming an influencer herself, right? And so what we do at Snap is really, like I said, try to enable this creative economy, enable folks to like go ahead and like, create their art, whatever they may look like. And, a lot of times that looks like shows for us. And so, the Brew team that, is the team who actually like, created this character. It's been a lot of, working with them and talking to them about like, hey, what is the story? What is the story behind this robot? Why does she exist?
Wow.
Right. And the basis of this show is called Get Real because it's like, people send in their questions and like the things that they have. And she just answers them in an honest and open way, in a way that, maybe a real person can't necessarily answer, sometimes, but she really like just offers her perspective. But it's definitely an interesting process just in terms of like the digital effects, what goes into it. There's a lot of like goes into like rendering, like even like the smallest movements and things like that.
Really?
Outfits, things like that. It's fascinating process.
So is this someone that or this bot, you guys get this bot like human features?
Yep. She has an Instagram and a Snapchat account, and like she actually takes selfies with celebrities. She has like some music on Spotify you can check out actually. So wow. It's actually a very interesting, I think, kind of foray into like what influencer culture kind of looks like and what it can be.
So is this Mikayla? So is Mikayla like, how does Mikayla? So what's Mikayla's like ultimate purpose in this ecosystem that you guys created?
Yeah, I mean, I think what we always want to do at Snap is like, allow people from, at many levels, that's what I'm really focused on is like from the first person starting out to like the top influencer, allow them all to have a voice and like really get their art seen and like, get their voice out. And I think what, Mikayla is really trying to do is like, break down some like maybe some stereotypes, have some real conversations. She's been like, Gen Z is a very strong audience with, like Snapchat, obviously. I think like 90% in the US, 90% of 13 to 24-year-olds are on Snapchat, like 75% of 13 to 34-year-olds on Snapchat.
Wow.
So, which is like crazy, right?
Damn.
Like, isn't that ridiculous?
Man.
When I was like first like, thinking about Snapchat and I first like started learning about it, I was like, oh wait, there's like a valuable audience here that people maybe don't necessarily know about, that people haven't been thinking about. And understanding that like this generation grew up with cell phones, they grew up with influencers, they grew up with all these things that's just normal and natural. I think what Mikayla's really trying to do is like have a different perspective, have a real conversation, and honestly be honest with people about, like real stuff. She tackles like,
I was gonna say, what type of questions are people asking her?
Yeah, so people are asking questions about like, hey, like relationships, like how do I like know about, like typical like Gen Z.
Wow, that's
like,
crazy.
How do I know if somebody's ghosted me, stuff like that, or things about like the world, like. Okay,
but people know that this is a robot, right?
Yeah, they know that she's a robot, and like some of it is like us obviously working to answer the questions. But we want to make sure that we're, providing real honest answers. And like, she definitely like points to talking about like loving yourself and like really understanding and respecting who you are as a person, respecting your values, knowing, what you will and won't stand for, and really making sure that, in the midst of all the digital, like, revolution that's happening, that you still have some grounding and some values within yourself and like reinforcing that in whatever ways you really can. And I think that's what, we think about a lot at Snap too, is like, how do we make sure that we stand on values that can like, last over time?
So in doing this, I'm sure you've learned how to, I guess, create a following online. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, historically what I've been doing, as part of my career, this latest part of my career is like, working with like top creators, working with influencers, celebrities, and thinking about how they think about the strategy for their business, growing their strategy, growing their influencing, and also like, building a strong like connection with their audience.
Man, so how do you guys balance that type of responsibility? Because like, how many followers does Mikayla have?
I think she has about like on Snapchat, she has about 1 million. She has about 2 million on Instagram.
So if I have 1 million followers on Snap and Instagram, how do I monetize that? Like, what's the value of having 1 million followers?
Yeah, I mean, so I think that there's a lot of value, and it's a lot about like, figuring out what your messaging is, what your purpose is at the end of the day. Some people,
Message,
want to like,
purpose. Okay.
yeah, some people are like, hey, like I want to like use this audience that I've gained to just really like shed light and be a light in the world and like really like inform them and things like that. And some people do that, and some people are like, hey, like I want to build this audience and then eventually monetize them. And people can monetize them through like ways like, merchandise. That's one thing that we do on, Snapchat is we have a pretty cool integration with actually like Shopify. So if you have, for example, a Shopify store and you're a verified creator on Snap or you have a Snap show, we actually have this integration where you can actually swipe straight up and go into a store where you like directly can like purchase the app. Like you literally like see the item, click the next size, click checkout, and like you can like, go ahead and purchase, right? Actually, we did that recently, with like as a celebration for the March on Washington, kind of thinking about how we balance, the things that are important to us value-wise and like how you can actually build an audience to celebrate the 57th anniversary of the March on Washington. We had these 6 Black artists create these face masks. Can actually use the face mask and try it on using Snapchat because we have like AR lenses, what a lot of people refer to as filters, where you can actually overlay what this mask would actually look like if you tried it on. And then you can actually click shop, buy it now, and then buy the mask there. So, I have actually one of the masks here, like somewhere around my house that you actually like can just go purchase right on Snapchat.
Wow.
So you're always thinking about like, what are the cool integrations, things like that, that are innovative, that really allow our, creators to connect with their audience and then provide utility and value between both of those audiences.
Man. So did you see that thing on Netflix called The Social Dilemma? Did you see that?
I did.
How much of that is true?
It's a good question. I don't want to get too far into like, some of that stuff, but, I think that my opinion is that, and I've worked in, tech, social media, and all the companies that they reference, for the last like 8+ years. And I think that many of these services that we talked about were created with good intentions. And I think that it's easy to look back and say like, oh, like people created these things to spread information. It's easy to like look back and like, you have a point of view to push that. But I think that at the end of the day, most of these services were created to like create community, connect folks with each other, right? When they think about, even like YouTube, right? This podcast lives on YouTube and allows so many people to connect and like, the ability to build a community and see things that they wouldn't be exposed to experience parts of the world that they wouldn't otherwise have access to. And I think that, sometimes there have been unintended consequences that have come about because people haven't paid attention to the whole picture and haven't paid attention to like, hey, what's going to happen in 10 years? What's the long-term legacy? But honestly, when I think about how like Snapchat kind of like sits in there, I think that historically Snapchat has made different decisions for reasons where like, for example, until recently, we just announced a new feature, but like, misinformation cannot go viral on Snapchat, right? We make sure that it is a closed garden where, to be able to like get a show or get a following, we actually looked at it and approve it. If you want to be verified, that's the only way for you to get an additional audience that doesn't already follow you on Snapchat, right? So you're not going to go and gain all this additional subscribers, without, us being able to like say this person spreads like, talks about truth. This person lives in truth. This person like actually like lives in facts. So I think that, what we can do is be more cautious about it, like understand that, hey, technology brings with it all these valuable things, but what are the side effects that we aren't thinking about, right? Like what is the impact of being on your phone 24 hours a day?
Yeah.
Dopamine feedback loop that happens when, I'm scrolling down my timeline and every once in a while I get something that's like, oh, like this is great.
Yeah. So you guys had those conversations.
Yeah. I think it's important and it's core to the design of how Snapchat is built, to making sure that, we're not allowing, even, if you look back, a few months ago, Donald Trump was like, enticing like racial violence, right? And we made a decision, like we will no longer promote his account to people who aren't seeing him, who aren't already subscribed to him. And, we were the only people to really make that, call because that is part of our core values. And we were like, hey, like, it doesn't matter, the financial implications. If he gets mad at us, if he writes, some kind of executive order, it's important that we make sure we stand in our values. So.
Yo, that's tough, man. I mean, because on one end, you want to be the best platform out there, but you got to balance that with being responsible. And when I saw that social dilemma, it was like, you get a like, and then it was like, oh, it making you feel like, does she like me? Or like all of these different things that the programmers or engineers were behind in influencing how a person scrolled and all of those things, man. That's crazy. And now you guys have an artificial bot that is interacting with people. I mean, I'm trying to think about the closest thing I had to that was like a Teddy Ruxpin. You know what I'm saying? Growing up, and you pull the string and it says something back. Like that was, or a fortune cookie. I mean, that was about it. Now you have people going to a bot to get advice, man. I mean, that's. Welcome to the Goldfish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Goldfish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. That's interesting stuff, man. So how did you get this role at Snap?
Yeah, it was definitely an interesting process. So, before I started at Snap, I spent the last, 8 years before that at Google and YouTube. Most recently, I was, working at YouTube, managing like relationships with like some of the top creators on the platform. So really thinking about, how do we build their businesses? How do we, think about, growing their audience over the long term and helping them achieve their business goals at the end of the day. And so I've been doing a lot of work there. And actually, the way it kind of like all went down was, they were looking for somebody to do, something, helping to build out the creator ecosystem at Snap. And a friend who was actually, a previous client, so she was the manager of one of the other creators that I had previously worked with. She was having conversations with Snap, and they were like, "Hey, do you know anybody that could be interesting for this role?" And so, I went, and this is actually October 2019. Had some conversations, with Snap, and I was like, okay, this is interesting. And at first I was like, I don't know, I don't know what this is going to be. But then, actually before I was at Google, I was an investment banker. So then I start to go and look into the financials and look at like the earnings reports and all that things of Snap. And I was looking, and like I said before, I was like, oh, wait, I think that, people thought that Snapchat like ended in 2017. But they haven't been paying attention to what, there were some challenges that happened to the business and things like that. But Snapchat has been building a strong business over the last, number of years to grow their audience, to strengthen their relationships with advertisers, to do all these things. And I was like, okay, I have a good feeling about this. And then, just in my conversations, with, my current manager and the people on the team, I really felt excited about, what, we're trying to do at Snap and like the opportunity to like really create these, opportunities for creators, but also to serve Gen Z. I am so like gung ho on Gen Z. I know people like talk shit about them and like whatever, but like, I am like, they are the people who are out in these streets leading the revolution. They are the ones who like, have a better, broader view of the world. They're more educated. They don't believe in like American exceptionalism and all these like ideas that, we've been like taught historically. And they're diverse as hell. Like, right. And so I have so much faith in them. And the fact that this is one of the platforms that reaches so many of them gets me so excited to like figure out how I can serve them, how I can provide them with relevant and like accurate information every day and entertainment, obviously at the end of the day too.
So Snapchat is the preferred outlet for Gen Z.
I would say so.
Wow. Over Instagram.
Oh yeah, definitely over Instagram. Like there actually, there's like, studies that have come out, I think most recently that says like, amongst, Gen Z, Snapchat is number one. And so
who would be right behind that?
I think TikTok might be right next to it.
Wow. That is crazy, man. When Facebook came out, I thought that was it. I was like, yo, this is it. Then Instagram, I was like, and Snap and all of that.
Yeah.
TikTok, I have an account, but I haven't made much time for it. I'm like, damn, this stuff keeps evolving. Now you got, I guess, Clubhouse is trying to get
Oh yeah.
some
On that, I've been like getting notifications. I like listening sometimes.
yeah, it's interesting to see how these things unfold. But going back to how you started at Snap, and reading your bio, I was like, man, why would somebody go from YouTube to
Yeah.
Snapchat or Google to Snapchat? Because effectively, I mean, I know Google has competitors. I guess Bing is a competitor, and YouTube has a competitor, quote unquote. But I just don't see I don't ever see YouTube going out of business or ever somebody taking that market share from Google or YouTube, because their products are like second to none, man. I mean, I know you said you worked at Barclays, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you got that investment background. That's dope that you was like, yo, let me look at the numbers.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I make this move, because you probably was thinking like me too, like, because from a brand perspective, it don't really make sense off bat until you kind of take a deep dive. So no regrets, huh?
Honestly, like it's funny. So I call her my auntie, but like she's the lady who recruited me to Google. And like I like every time I've made any move, even at Google, like like referenced her. She's been like always in my corner, always like on my board of directors, as I call it. And she asked me yesterday, like, well, how do you feel about it? Like, is this look at this show? And I was like, hands down, best decision I've ever made. Like, no regrets.
Wow.
And I think that it's one of those things, right, where when you're going to be trailblazing things, you're never going to be the one that's like sitting where the consensus is going to be, right? And so like, even when I worked at Google, like I started at Google in 2012, right? Like Google wasn't what it is today, right? And people view of it as like, oh, big technology, but it wasn't that in 2012. People weren't like clamoring to go like, like be at Google and things like that in the same way. Right. And like back then, like it's so funny, like people weren't even using their mobile phones to do searches that much. Right. Like, can you imagine like how often do you search for stuff on your phone? Just like
Man, crazy. Every few minutes.
Literally. And there was a point where, actually when I first started at Google, I worked in automotive sales. And so I was like going to like talk to like automotive CMOs and tell them like, hey, you should be using the internet to like sell cars because people care about that. And like, they will always be like, what are you talking about? Like TV is the place to be. Right. And like, and so like, I feel like that's how my career has consistently been, is like, whenever you're going to be in a place where this, like, I always try to be where the puck is going towards, if you will. And so like, when that was mobile search before, right. That was like, when I started at Google, when I started YouTube, working with YouTube creators, people were like, what is an influencer? What is a creator? What is a YouTuber? Like, it's about celebrities, right?
Yeah.
Like, 3 years, I spent 4 years doing that. And like now, like when you can't get on the internet without seeing people $100 billion for creators. Like we're trying to do all this stuff to get influencers and creators.
That's crazy. Right? I saw that like being a YouTuber was like one of the top 3 professions that kids want to go into now. Like if you ask,
it's so crazy to like kind of even like experience that and know that. But like, I remember like, I call them my kids, like the creators that I work with, like that they were like, shunned by like traditional celebrities in so many ways, because they were like, oh, like what? This is fake. Like, this is like on the computer. It's not real TV. It's not real Hollywood. And now like these are the biggest stars in the world. So I think that, whenever you're going to be in a place where, you're trailblazing or you're like visionary and you're like, hey, I see this truth, I see this thing happening and I'm going to help make that happen. Like, yeah, there's going to be like, most people aren't going to be, in that same boat until you like change it. And so that's how I've been thinking about it.
So Snapchat is a profitable company.
Yeah, we are a revenue generating company. I think that, this quarter we on an adjusted EBITDA basis made a profit, this quarter. And I think that the perspective for like revenue growth, user growth, all of that is like extremely positive. Again, the audience that we have is super, strong, have 250 million daily active users.
Wow.
And so when you think about like what a platform, really is, like, having an audience is important to being a platform. And, we have an audience. Yeah,
250, that's a lot.
Yeah.
So then, okay, so because I remember, I want to say, and I could be wrong, but I know that Snapchat kind of started as like an app for like cheaters, I guess. Like people that was like wanted to slide in people's DMs or like cheat on a significant other or whatever. And it was like this big buzz about, oh, you could send somebody a message and once they read it, it's gone. So it was like pretty dope. And then I don't know if it was Instagram or Facebook that like was like, yo, we gonna try to buy Snapchat or whatever. And then Snap was like, no, or something like that. You can correct me whenever I'm wrong. And then, so then I guess that fell apart. And then I think Instagram came out with like the stories. And then I think Kim Kardashian or somebody said like, people still use Snapchat? Like, you know, like basically a sneak diss. Yeah. And then that's when like, in terms of like my mind share, like I was like, oh, well, Snapchat fell off. You know what I'm saying? Like, but I guess it fell off for people my age. You know what I'm saying? So how did Snap like overcome all of those things? Because Instagram is still a giant in the game. And then to basically just replicate what was Snapchat's competitive advantage, how did Snap overcome that?
Yeah. So I think when I think about like how like Snapchat like really got started, you know, I think a lot of it was like, how do we mimic, you know, real life communication using an app, right? So like, you know, this conversation is obviously recorded, but most times when you're having a conversation with somebody, you know, there's no transcript, there's no video call of it. And so you can like say what you would really say, like, you know, you can be your real self. And I think that's how Snapchat was really like kind of formulated and thought of, you know, from the beginning. And then like, you know, some of the history of like, you know, like stories, you know, became seen as a format, you know, that we, you know, was popular, you know, like was, you know, put on like Instagram and things like that. But I think that Snapchat has always been focused on like, how do we innovate, right? Like, how do we make sure that like understanding that we're going to be first at like releasing certain things and other people might adopt them and scale them, you know, to their platforms. But if we're like super thoughtful about how we create our platform, you can't really like, you know, copy that. You can't really like, you know, take that in a lot of ways. And so I think what we focus on is like, how do we build a creator ecosystem that has a lot of content that is really valuable to folks? So we've created like, you know, actual original shows that we have on Snapchat. We have creator shows on Snapchat.
So do these shows, they don't like, once you watch it, you can't watch it again?
Nope. So they like live in the app. They're like, you know, actual originals. We have one with Will Smith that we did, you know, called Will from Home, you know, which is actually like just a look behind his like real life. You know, we work with like, you know, top A-list creators and celebrities, you know, I'm creating some of these shows.
So are you working with them yourself?
Yeah. Yep. So part of what I do is like really help, you know, from a talent side, manage originals, manage creator shows, manage our syndicated shows.
Wow.
It's such a fascinating, like crazy, like opportunity. Like you never could have told me that I would be like doing show development a few years ago. Like I never thought that would be a thing that I do, but like, yeah, that's what I do now. So
yo, that's pretty dope, man. That's pretty dope to be working with people that we grew up watching.
Right? Yeah.
Especially to be from the D. You know what I'm saying? You all the way from the D, you know, you all the way out there, man. Why do you think you've been able to successfully navigate in that tech Silicon Valley world? Because a lot of studies say that, you know, Black people are underrepresented out there, and a lot of stereotypes of even when Blacks do get opportunities that they're just not ready for it, you know, out there. What has led to your success?
Yeah, it's a good question. So like when I started at Google, I will say like one of the first things that they like kind of impressed on me was like, bring your whole self to work. Right. And like, this is like a phrase they would say, and I would be like, what does that really mean? Like, I don't know what that really means. Like, you want me, like, I got tattoos, like, I got a sleeve, bro. Like, I don't know, like, if y'all really want this. And like, I had this mentor where I was like, when they say bring my full self to work, like, do they really mean that? This is like within a month of me starting. He was like, yes, like, bring your full self to work. And so since that day, I've decided that like, I'm going to be myself and I'm going to be authentic in 100% of situations. And I think that is what has been bolded, right? Like, I'm going to say what I feel. I'm going to like, you know, I'm not going to be
bringing 8 Mile up in there, huh? Coney Island, all of that.
I bring the east side of Detroit with me, but also like, I can bring you the Barclays Capital, like investment banker. I can bring you, you know, I helped start 1,000 Bottles. So I can bring you the marketing angle too, if we need to do that. But like, I'm gonna be myself and I'm gonna say how I feel and I'm gonna be authentic about it and real about it. And sometimes it's gonna make you uncomfortable. It might be about like, hey, there's no Black people who work here and I'm the only one, and I'm gonna bring it up and raise it as an issue, and I'm gonna consistently make sure that y'all are aware of it. And like sometimes that's it, and sometimes it's like, like, okay, like I disagree with this decision. It's your right to make this decision, but I'm gonna just still tell you how I feel. And I think that for me, I've always been like comfortable in like living in that truth. And like understanding that like I don't come here to be accepted every day. I come here to be authentic. And as long as I show up like authentic and like living my values, then like there's nothing that we can really like you can do to take away from that. And to be honest, like when you're like, I think it's so often that we're the only people who look like us in the room, and there's no way you're mediocre. Like if you're the only one in that room that looks like you, there's no way. They're not just letting people in the room, like clearly. Mm-hmm. So like done so many things, like you've like been so tight in every like situation that like I don't walk in the room thinking that anybody's better than me. I don't walk in the room thinking I'm better than anybody else. But I know from like CEO to janitor, like we're all humans at the end of the day, and I'm gonna treat you with respect. But like your opinion doesn't necessarily outweigh mine. And like Silicon Valley is an interesting place where that does kind of like ring true in some respects, right? Where great ideas tend to like raise to the top. So, I try to just like live in that truth and knowing that like, hey, like I went to Howard and I'm excellent as fuck. And I'm gonna bring my authentic self whenever I come here.
Wow, man. That's what's up. So when you were working at places like YouTube and like when you worked at YouTube or Google, did they present you with like stock options?
Yeah.
Oh, that's dope. So you make sure you stay there just long enough to take advantage of all of that. Yeah, so when you go to a company, Snap, because Snap, that's not a public company, right?
It is.
Oh, I didn't know that. So did you have to negotiate salary with them?
Yeah, definitely.
So how did you prepare for that? Was that something that you had already done before, or did you lean on your mentor? How did you go about doing that?
It was definitely a process. And I think that, for me, one of the greatest times to like be applying for a job is when you don't necessarily need one. Yeah. Right. So like, always understanding like, what your value is, what you bring to the table, I think is super important. And not being afraid to like ask, right? And like I had mentors, I had friends who work in HR. I call them like my board of directors, actually. Like, so I like a group of folks that like, my closest friends that I rely on. And actually, like, I took a roll call vote for all the people who are on my board of directors, like my life board of directors, and like made them like, what would you do? Would you like go to Snap or would you stay at YouTube, like given these circumstances? It was a pretty overwhelming vote, to go to Snap, actually, just given the opportunity. But also, when I was like, going through the negotiation process, I knew like, this is the value I bring. This is, like what my worth is. If I'm going to like go from like, again, like you said, like reputation wise, like YouTube is YouTube and Snapchat is Snapchat. So understanding, like, hey, this is what I'm going to bring here. This, is what my worth is. And like, I was willing to have those conversations. And like, even when it was like slightly awkward or uncomfortable, I knew like, hey, like, this is what negotiating is. This is what folks have been doing all the time. And like one piece of advice I would always say is like, always ask the question, right? Always ask. Even when I would switch jobs at Google, I would be like, hey, but I got to move from New York to LA. Like, can I get a raise? And they'd be like, no. And I'd be like, okay, cool. I was going to take it anyway, but I'm going to ask the question because, wow, I'm going to help add value and I should be compensated for that.
So when you're in these rooms, man, and it's only you, or as few of us, imposter syndrome, that never set in at all?
It's interesting. A couple of years ago, I was at this summit, and like we did this trader summit at YouTube, and Will Smith talked about imposter syndrome, and he talked about how he has imposter syndrome like every day. Like Will Smith, like talked about how he has imposter syndrome.
Wow,
which is like crazy. And I think that, I just try to move through the world with like kind of like grace for other people. and like understanding like, hey, like we're all humans at the end of the day. And I think there can be moments where you like second guess yourself and like, yes, I've always like, I felt, especially early on in my career, like, what is going on? Like, should I speak up right now? Like, I don't know. Like a little bit unsure. Like, you know, this dude, I remember like the dude next to me, his dad was like our biggest client's son, right? When I was a banker, right? Like the dude, like the other intern was like our biggest client's son. Right. So I'm like, okay, well, he at least like, even if he doesn't have a leg up for who his dad is, like he's been around finance like for a while. So he knows this in a different way.
Right.
I would have those moments, you know, but over time, like I, you know, kind of just like was able to get comfortable with the fact that like, you know, I am generally, like I said, I went to Howard, you know, we generally tend to be excellent, you know, and also like when I am the only one in the room, it's like, nobody's giving that to me, right? Like there's this like idea of, right, like, are we like lowering the bar to hire people or whatever? I'm like, well, no, because there's nobody being hired. Like there's 4% Black people working in these tech firms. So like, no, there's no way the bar could be lowered. So like, I'm only here because like I've had to like jump over all the extra hoops. Like I grew up in the projects. Like I like had to like do so many things to get here that like, there's no way I can be an imposter because I've done the work. Like I've done it. And like, I think when we like stop and look back at our history and like remind ourselves of what we've done in the past, like that helps us get comfort in being like, no, you're here for the right reason. You belong in this room.
What's it like to go back home, being it is probably so different from what it's like in your everyday, you know, situation?
You know, it's interesting because like, yeah, it's definitely, you know, it's a reminder of growth, I think, in so many ways. You know, just like, you know, just where I came from and like, you know, the opportunities that I, you know, grew from and like the opportunities that have been afforded to me. But it's also like a reminder of who I am and like the reason I'm out here grinding. Like, you know, I'm out here doing all these things for my family, for like the legacy, for the next generations, for the people who are my cousins who will grow up and see an opportunity like, okay, like, yeah, I might be from here, but that doesn't mean that's the end of my story, right? I might be from the projects, but that doesn't mean I can't be projected to success. And so like going back home for me is like, you know, always heartwarming. And it's a good reminder of like, you know, the reason I'm out here grinding.
So what can be done to make tech more diverse?
Hire fucking diverse people. Like I said, like it sounds like a crazy like conundrum, but it's like hire people that like are more diverse. And it's like, you know, I think that, you know, a lot of times if you're on a sales team, for example, and like you're supposed to hit a sales quota, there's no like negotiating about it. It's like you either hit your quota or you don't, you get paid or you don't. And so if like, you know, having a, you know, workforce that looks like the world is important to you, then I think it should be the same thing. Like either you hit this number or you don't, you either made it or you didn't, and you like achieved the objective or you didn't. So tie compensation to that. Right? Like make sure that like, this is something that we're talking about as like, this is important for the firm, because at the end of the day, like people might say like, okay, like it's important to have a diverse like company because it makes you feel good and all that stuff. And while that might be true, it is better for business outcomes. Like studies show like financially firms do better when you're like more diverse. Like literally, like McKinsey has like tons of research and studies on this, right? They talk about how like, you know, if you just think about it, right? When I talk about Snapchat, I talk about Gen Z, like over 50% of Gen Z is like non-white, for example, right? So like, you know, if you're trying to serve an audience that is like commensurate to like what actually is representative in the world, like Gen Z, then you have to have employees that will understand the preferences of these people.
So you saying 50% of that population is non-white?
Yeah, like, yeah. So
wow. So that's interesting, given that Donald Trump was just in office. So I guess we should probably, over the next 10 years, when I guess that entire audience is voting, I'm thinking government is probably going to look a lot different.
Yeah, I think that you will see that. I think so. Two things to that. One, I think that we obviously see that that's very important. So at Snapchat, we created, like, again, we're always focusing on innovating. So we created like these tools around this last election cycle to make sure that, you know, people could like register to vote. So we registered over 1.2 million people directly in the Snapchat app.
Wow.
And you can imagine those were like first time voters, Gen Z voters, They over-index this in places like Texas and North Carolina. But then we also were like making sure people got education. So you could actually go like pick up your sample ballot in the app and figure out where people stood on certain issues and like select a sample ballot. And then like take that with you to the poll to actually like figure out, hey, who am I going to vote for? And then you could actually share with your friends, like, hey, I plan to vote like this. I plan to vote by mail. I'm going to plan to vote in person, and like kind of encourage your community to go out and vote.
Wow.
But two, I think that when we think about what the world and what the country is going through right now, California is an interesting place because like the world, the country more broadly is going through this shift in demographics where, you know, the majority of people will be minorities or, you know, non-white people, right? And like California has gone through this shift over the last 20 years. And you've seen a lot of like changes in housing policy and certain like social economic policy and things like that have been like a little bit, you know, it's been a hard thing to deal with, I think, to be honest. And I think that we'll see more of this happening in other places in the country. And it'll be interesting to see how you can maybe learn from some of the lessons that happened in California and think about how do we make sure that we're, you know, speaking to like the entire community that like understands all aspects of like, you know, the white voters, the non-white voters, like everybody.
Yeah. So if I'm a small business or a business, how do I make money off of Snapchat? For example, I got an insurance agency here in Chicago. How can I leverage Snapchat? I mean, for Instagram, it seems clear. For Facebook, it seems clear. But, you know, I'm this guy. I'm 40, kind of generation, kind of millennial, kind of not a millennial. I got like half a toe in that. But I want to stay relevant. You know, I probably got 20 more years left to be out here working, man. How do I get on Snapchat and make my presence felt?
Yeah. So I think one of the things that we're like, you know, again, we want to be super thoughtful about how we rolled out, you know, different opportunities around like being a creator on Snap, being a business on Snap. Because I think when I think about it, I think at the end of the day, what you want from a business and what you want from your friend and what you want from a celebrity is very different. And so like sometimes like, you know, like you might, you know, in some of the traditional feeds, you might get all of those things like all served to you together. But we've been trying to be very thoughtful about how we, you know, stand up brands on Snap, how we stand up creators on Snap, and like how regular people, you know, who, you know, use Snap as well. So I think one of the key ways if you're, you know, as a business is thinking about like, hey, we have this extremely valuable audience. Right. So like you want to bring in this audience. We have, you know, a very strong advertising product where you can actually go like and like serve ads, you know, for your insurance company, right? For example, to, you know, Snapchat users. And you can like say like, hey, are you looking for insurance products in the midst of this pandemic? like create a super interactive ad that actually like encourages people to come in and like go to your site. Another thing that we do is like with our AR and lenses, which, you know, again, some people call filters, we might do branded opportunities with that. So like, you know, Champs, and for example, recently did this thing where you can actually try a pair of shoes on, you know, using the app, right? And then you can actually go in and purchase them. So, you know, I think that, you know, it's innovative ideas like that, you know, we're really focusing on. And what we want to do is like, you know, we want, you know, our customers to come to us and say like, hey, this is what I'm interested in. Like, let's figure out a way to make this happen. And so we're always interested in kind of like trailblazing and things like that. But I think that those are some of the easy ways today to like, you know, serve some ads, build up your presence, you know, we recently announced brand profiles. So if you're a brand on Snap, you can actually go in and like have a profile and say, hey, I'm a business. And so, yeah, those are some of the ways.
How do you, I mean, who's the number one influencer on Snap right now?
It depends on the day. I think that like, you know, some of our biggest ones, you know, we've been working with like, there's this guy named Devin on Deck. He's a great influencer. He does a lot of fashion, you know, stuff. There's this lady named Elsa Majimbo. She's great. She does these like hilarious comedy videos. You may have seen her, like she like does it, like she like eats chips and stuff like that. You know, obviously, like, you know, the Kardashians are like, you know, relatively big. So yeah, there's a bunch of folks, and honestly, we recently announced this thing called Spotlight, which is really again trying to encourage like the creative economy more and more. So with the release of that, we're really hoping to like grow a bunch of folks and really show that you can go from being, you know, a person who's interested in creating content that connects with folks. Maybe you know, create something in Spotlight that, you know, goes viral, but then you can also like have a show. And so we're really trying to create that entire, you know, funnel of opportunities for creators.
So do you all study like your competitors? Like, do you keep an eye on what these other folks are out here doing?
Yeah, of course. Like, you know, it's a part of the industry. So like, I understand like what's happening in the industry. Like I use Instagram all the time. I work at YouTube. So like, yeah.
So what do you think? What are your thoughts on Clubhouse? What do you think that's gonna end up being? Because yesterday it was, I guess Kevin Hart came on. Did you hear about that?
Oh.
Yeah. So Kevin Hart came into a room and was like, it was like a room for like comics, and they was just asking him about success. And then, like, you know how that platform works, you could bring people to the stage, they could ask questions. So it turned into, it would like went south. They asked him about, like, I guess he said his daughter had like some whole tendencies, and then they started talking about Bill Cosby. So it became like this big back and forth. And then, like, you know, the mob mentality. So then people started taking the other person's side, and then Kevin Hart like left the room. So then, like, after that, every group, every chat was about our celebrities gonna stay away from Clubhouse, and it was just this big old thing. So as an entrepreneur myself, I'm trying to figure out how to navigate through Clubhouse.
Yeah.
But what are your first impressions of it?
It sounds interesting to me. I think, especially in the midst of a pandemic where, like, you know, folks, you know, still want the ability to like have community, like formulate, you know, opportunities, right? I think that, you know, one of the things that, you know, if anything, social network does make clear is like, there is a need for social connection amongst humans. Like that is a core basic need. Like we need connection with each other. And I think that Clubhouse is an interesting way to like, you know, think about how we do that. I do think that, you know, one of the classic issues that, you know, you kind of just brought up is like, how do we, you know, moderate things? How do we make sure that, you know, it like the environments remain safe for folks to like really like express their views without, you know, it becoming a mob or things like that. And I think that that's one of the things that we all have to think a lot about, especially if we're like, you know, launching apps or like creating these social experiences that can become viral.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what are the implications? And, you know, that's what I was like kind of getting at a little bit earlier is like, you know, thinking, I think a lot of things, you know, we started with good intentions, but just making sure we understand like, hey, what's the long-term implications? And like, how do we take that feedback early and be like, okay, understanding that, what do I need to do differently? Or how can I set this up in a different way?
Welcome to the Goldfish Village podcast. As a Chinese proverb says, give a man a fish and you feed him for a day. Teach a man to fish and you feed him for a lifetime. At Goldfish, our goal is to teach individuals just like you how to build wealth through real estate. Is it hard working in a field where it's like you got to be innovative constantly? You know what I mean? Like, I get it's fun, you know, but sometimes you just want to hit cruise control. You know what I'm saying? Does that bring added stress to you?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think it's definitely one of those things where like, yeah, there's a dynamic of like, you know, innovation, you know, things that like what was true today doesn't necessarily have to be true tomorrow, right? You know, even this pandemic has taught us like the world's 9 months ago, 10 months ago was a whole different world. Like even look at the stock market, it was a whole different place. But like, you know, I think it makes it interesting to be like, how do I, you know, make sure I'm innovating? How do I make sure I understand the world as much as possible?
Because nobody wants to be you. I mean, MySpace, right?
I'm sure Tom from MySpace is having a good time. but yeah, but I think it's also like, you know, understanding the balance and the need for like, you know, we're humans at the end of the day, and like we need human connection. We need to like be able to disconnect. We need to be able to like, you know, not rely solely on technology to provide us dopamine. Mm-hmm. I think about like, the psychology of it all, and like thinking about like, yes, you can get a short-term dopamine hit by like seeing some content you really love, but where you get long-term dopamine is like setting out a goal and accomplishing it. And like, how do I orient my brain towards like being more long-term dopamine like focused versus short-term?
Wow. So that's a word that's probably used often. Dopamine.
I've been using it a lot. Like, honestly, I've been like researching a lot recently, and like even like off the back of the social network, and thinking a lot about these type of subjects. And in the midst of a quarantine, actually, I've been like finding myself sometimes using social media too much. So like, especially like the week of the election, like I don't know what your life was like, but my brain felt like that like SpongeBob meme where I was like, I don't know what's going on.
Is it true that like, sometimes like I might say something like Howard, and then I'll get on my phone, then like Howard pops up, or like I just see this man. Is that true, or is that like a rumor?
I don't know if it's that like specific, but there's certain like marketing tools like remarketing. Like if you like historically like looked at something on the internet, right, and you see it pop up again, like an ad for that thing pop up later, it could be like, hey, yes, like understanding. Personally, like I prefer ads that are relevant, right? Like I like to be served ads that are kind of relevant, and also helps keep the internet free.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Versus like, I don't want to be served ads for things that are just not in my wheelhouse. So, yeah.
So tell me about your Howard experience.
Oh, Howard honestly is one of the top 3 things to ever happen in my life, and it's not number 3. It's funny because like when I was applying to Howard, my mom kind of was like, I don't know, like, what? Like, maybe you should go to Harvard, like, whatever. Because like I was a first generation college graduate. But then we went to go visit. And it's like, I feel like everybody has this story, but like you walk on campus and I feel like I was at home, and like that's literally what happened. Like I got there, I don't know where this girl came from, but out of nowhere, she's like, hi, you look like you just got here. Do you want to tour? And I was like, okay. And like, she like took me all around campus, told me all about it. And like that moment I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to that school. I don't care. And then, getting to Howard, like I was like, again, like first generation college student from Detroit, like kind of like, I never been to DC for real. I don't really know what's going on. I don't really know what college is about to be like. But I decided early, like, okay, I'm gonna just try, to do whatever I can, like have no regrets by the time I leave here. So,
did you choose Howard over Harvard? Yeah. So you got into Harvard.
I like started through the process. I like went through the interview and all that stuff, but then I was like, I'm going to Howard. Like it just is what it is.
So you must have been an exceptional student then.
I went to a pretty good school, in Detroit.
What school did you go to?
I went to Renaissance.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know Renaissance, Cass, and King are like the top schools out there.
But yeah. And so, and like, honestly, Howard is one of the best things that ever happened to me. I pledged at Howard.
What did you pledge?
I pledged Alpha, Beta chapter.
Oh, nice. So you know Brandon Jones.
Yeah. I love BJ.
Yeah, we was roommates for 3 years at Howard.
Oh, where? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, man. Yep. Armand, all of them guys, man.
He's at Google for about 7 years too.
He's at LinkedIn now.
Yeah. So, and then like pledged sophomore year, and then like being in the School of B, I was in like the honors program, so I got to go see the world. We went to like London a few times, and then like I stayed abroad actually at Howard. I went to like study in Japan actually.
Wow.
And that really changed. Honestly, that experience changed my whole view of the world.
Really? How so?
Because like, up until that point, I had been to like London and I had visited like, places and things like that. But like going to Tokyo was like, oh, this is a totally different way of like living life. It's a totally different way of like experiencing the world. Like the way school was different. Like the even the structure of the school day was different. The toilet was different. like, like kind of squat to use the bathroom there and stuff like that. They have bidets and stuff. And I was like, oh, like everything that I've been taught that the world has to be doesn't have to look like this.
Yeah.
And I think that really like I will credit that with like just starting my quest to like see more and more of the world. And like, I've visited probably like 50 countries at this point. Just cause like, it was just so interesting. Like Yoko Ono's sister was my teacher there.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was just like such an eye-opening experience that, really helped change my life, honestly.
Man, I mean, I've always wanted to study abroad, but I was just I thought I was going to have like FOMO,
I did it in the summer. I
didn't want to leave Howard, but that's like my biggest regret though. I feel like I should have just did an extra year at Howard and then studied abroad.
Yeah.
So once you you came into beta chapter as a sophomore, what was that like, and what made you pursue Alpha?
Yeah, it's funny because like nobody in my family really, like I said, had gone to college before, and like I didn't really know much about the fraternities. But I was like looking around and like being like, oh, is this something that could be interesting? And like doing the research, and I was like, oh, these guys like seem like pretty stand-up dudes. And my campus pal was this dude named Phil Murray.
I know Phil. Yeah, I was a pal too.
Yeah. And Phil actually ended up being my roommate eventually at some point in New York and stuff like that. And like, I just would talk to him about it a little bit. And I talked to Brandon Hines, who was also from Detroit, about, what their experience is like. And I was like, oh, these are the kind of dudes that like feel like they make stuff happen. Like they're, about their business, like smart, but also fly at the same time. So, went through that process. And, crossing was like, at first I didn't even know what to expect in the process, but like, I will say like, what I've learned through beta chapter, through alpha is like how to make stuff happen no matter what, and I think that, they say everything at Howard is a process, like, graduating is a process, like getting like your schedule changed is a process, all that stuff. And like, I feel like throughout the experiences that I've gotten there, it's taught me so much about life and like how, like, if you stay focused on your goals, if you're trying to achieve something, like just make it happen. At the end of the day, nobody cares about your excuses because like everybody like coulda, shoulda, woulda. Being able to make stuff happen at the end of the day is what people value. And I got to be president of Alpha at Howard for 2 years.
Nice.
So that was cool, and like we had some dope parties and stuff, of course.
Damn. So were you in any other organizations at Howard?
So I did like student government stuff. So I was like Houston financial advisor, stuff like that. But like, yeah.
Yeah, that's what's up. So, and right after Howard, is that when you went into investment banking?
Yeah, right after Howard. Like, so, it's funny because like, so I graduated in 2009 in the midst of the like financial crisis actually. And summer 2008, I interned at this bank called Lehman Brothers.
Oh, wow. They went under.
Yeah.
Damn, that's tough.
It was crazy. Like I worked there like right as like it's like if you ever watched the like movie The Big Short or Too Big to Fail, like I was like, oh yeah, I was there. Like I saw all that stuff go down. Like, but it was a fascinating time to be in finance and a fascinating time to just like learn and be able to like, start my career in this like kind of crazy environment, right? Because like even when the beginning of this year started happening and like people were like, oh, it's a pandemic. I'm like, yeah, but like also like we kind of been doing this like class of 2009. We did this like like straight out of college, so like it can't be worse than that, right?
Yeah.
But it taught me so much about like just like finances, like even like when I'm thinking about buying a house now, and I'm like, is it 2007 prices again? Like I don't know. Like it feels like prices going up. So like having that wherewithal and that ability and that understanding has definitely paid off.
Man. So what advice do you have for the 18-year-old Francis coming into Howard University right now?
What advice do I have? I would say like, live life with no regrets, to be honest. Like, try to do, as much as possible, as, and take advantage of all the opportunities that you can. Because I feel like I did get the opportunity to do that while I was at Howard. Like I have no regrets leaving Howard at all. And I feel like all of those things that I was able to do have paid off in dividends. All those things, like the relationships I was able to form, or like my best friends over the course of like my life, right? And so just like taking advantage of all the opportunities and like, being authentic and being true to yourself. And then at the end of the day, like have fun. Because like, life is to be lived. And like at the end of the day, like when we talk about, your life, people aren't going to talk about how much money you made or how hard you worked. It's going to be about the experiences that you had with your real life family, your real life friends. So like making sure that you understand and balance those things.
That's real talk, bro. That's real talk, man. So what are some things that you do to balance all of the stress that because you seem like a pretty ambitious dude, and one thing we know about ambition, man, is that you have these goals that you want to hit, and then you get there, and then sometimes that stress comes in to maintain everything that you've accomplished. So how do you maintain?
Honestly, so the number one thing that I do is I meditate every day. For the last 1,050 days or 1,005 days, I've like meditated using this app called Headspace. I think that helps me just like stay grounded and understanding that like, as I go through the world, like, I have a center point within myself, and like the world can be crazy, like the world can be going crazy, but I don't have to engage with it. I don't have to be a part of it. Outside of that, like, I like have some hobbies. Like I make shoes. So I like.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I can actually show you a pair I just recently made. But I took this class with this guy named the shoe surgeon. And so I started making like I made these.
Oh, that's dope. Hey man, you gotta send me some of them, bro. Come on, we gotta talk, man. I need to get my hands on some of them.
I got you.
That's dope, man.
Appreciate it. And yeah, I like to have fun and party. So like I back in the day, I started a event planning party planning company.
That's how it all started. I feel like every black man was throwing parties at one point in time. Call it event planning, call it marketing, call it consulting. Everybody at one point in time threw a party. At one point in time.
I know you were the man with that, right?
Yeah. That's crazy.
And it's like, one of those things where like, and it's like, it's cool because it's like, for me, it's like about the fun, obviously, and like the experience, but also like the gathering of folks and like allowing people to have an experience. And like, I always used to love our parties because I always used to say like, the reason people have fun at these parties is because we tell them that they're going to have fun before they get here. Mm-hmm. And so they come and like fulfill that prophecy, and they come and like actually like buy into that process. But also the people who like our parties are always like for the people, by the people. So like if you had an idea, like let us like we'll take that idea, sure. Like,
yeah, absolutely. It's funny. My first party I threw was with BJ and Armand. It was a Move Makers party. And then I think Armand, his idea was actually the boat ride, to be honest. But they was making so much money. They was like, I ain't got time to throw parties. They was like, you could keep that up. So I just kept it going, man. But yeah, everybody throws parties at one point in time, but it's value in it, from the relationships to the data that you collect to, you learn about behaviors of people. So that's dope, man.
Even in the experiences like that paid off later in my career, I think about so much of that stuff with like party planning, event planning and stuff. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I came up with a marketing scheme, and I was like, oh yeah, like I've been doing this. Like it's not like, and I think that the cool thing about like, even what you do, right, is like you can go in a room and you can be like, oh, I can sit in any of these chairs. Like I'm not just a finance person. I'm not just a marketing person. I'm not just this person, like the public speaking person. Like I can do all of these things. And
absolutely, man. No, it's a blessing, man. And it's a blessing to be able to do it for a crowd that's like Howard. You know what I'm saying? That caliber of people that you want to kick it with anyway. And why not make some money while you're at it? You know what I'm saying?
Because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
For sure.
It's like fun and games, but the audience of Howard and Howard Homecoming especially is like, it just hit different, bro. It just hit.
No, that 1,000 bottles party, that joint crazy, especially when y'all was when that first hit, that buzz was so tough, man.
Yeah. It was crazy. What a time.
So 100 years from now, man, what are people saying about Francis?
Honestly, like, I think that, like, when I think about, like, hey, like, what is my legacy or whatever, it's like, I want to leave the world better than I like found it. But like, really, like, I think about, like, how do I be a light in the world, right? How do I allow others to, like, either illuminate what they have inside them, illuminate the good and the positivity that is actually existing in the world, and like show, like, hey, there's grace to be had in the world, and like we all just need a little bit of it.
No, that's dope. That's dope, man. So, man, Francis Roberts, man, thanks for coming on the show today. I appreciate it.
Appreciate you, bro.
I know you're a busy guy, man. Moving and shaking out there in LA. I said, Francis, let's do it at 10 a.m. Francis like, nah, bro. Nah, bro. I'm still asleep at that time.
Yeah, I'm glad I did that too, because this week was a crazy one. But
yeah. So how can people get in touch with you, man, or maybe follow some of the projects that you're working on?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say, like, you can follow me on Snapchat, like Detroit-Red, but also on Instagram, Detroit_Red. Or if, you can find me on LinkedIn if you got questions, or if you're curious about what's going on. I'm just Francis M. Roberts. But yeah, always happy to especially talk to Howard folks. So I appreciate you for having me on.
For sure, man. Thanks again, man. Francis Roberts, Snapchat CEO. Appreciate you coming on, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Thank you for joining the HU Movemaker podcast, where we highlight folks that have contributed to the Howard legacy at the highest levels. To hear more interviews or purchase merchandise, please visit www.humovemakers.com.